Stage 2, the shock. Here we go. This is something we've always known is happening, and it is happening. It kind of feels like when you're stuck on the highest point of the roller coaster ride where you're like, why am I here? Why did I pay my money for this? Oh, get me out of here. When we encounter differences in another culture, it could come from different sources in different forms. For example, physical difference. I look different. Or the environmental difference. The weather is different. The number might be the same. It might be 25 degrees, but the 25 degree back home feels like 20, whereas the 25 degree here feels like 40. What's going on? My logic is completely thrown out of the window. Language difference, well, it's an obvious one. They speak different things than me. What am I going to do now? Lifestyle, which, it can be so broad. It can really be absolutely everything, every single detail of life. Social, that could be a killer. How do I make friends now? Why did they do that? How am I supposed to respond without offending this person? Systems and rules. Why does this country drive on the opposite side of the street? The way this country handles information is different from what I'm used to. How can I get credible sources of information now? And many more. The list is endless. As we said, the physical difference can be height difference, skin difference, build, physical feature in general, environment, weather. I'm built for different weathers. I have completely different metabolism compared to the locals, and as I mentioned, the trick of humidity. Language, it can be tricky because sometimes even if we prepared ourselves for the foreign language, it could still happen that I hear them, it just didn't register. I didn't know what that was about. And there is that question mark in the heart almost constantly. Lifestyle, as I mentioned, food, shower time, pastime, what do you do as a hobby, room size, as concrete as that, how big is the room in general. Social, this could be a list that never ends. Ideas of beauty, what is considered beautiful in this culture comparing to my own culture. Views and practices on marriage, do people get married here or do they prefer to, say in Sweden they do sambo, which is to live together, cohabitation, which was a shock to me. And how do you say yes with body language? Some cultures, well, most cultures will not, but some cultures do different things in order to say yes. And how to greet people, what are the taboos? Rules, as I mentioned briefly, which side of the road do you drive on? Educational system. How is this nation educating their people? And how do you obtain and filter information? The marker of this stage, which I'm quoting Rob again, from Canada in Jordan, he said, the markers of stage 2, the shock, is, these people can't do anything right. It's so different. Even though it's the same words, but we say it with such different attitudes and tone comparing to the honeymoon. I remember the honeymoon was like, these people are so beautiful even in their brokenness. Now it's like, they're so broken. The view is narrowed and the focus become the brokenness and not the beauty. Whereas before we feel the people in the host nation are always better, the way they do things are better. Now we change the scale back to our own culture and be like, they can't do anything right. Why do they do things like this? They're so inefficient, it's so wrong. It's so different, which is a negative thing now. Common reactions to culture shock. Notice there's 2 pages, it's a long list. Disorientation, whoa, what's going on? Easily exhausted, just don't want to meet people, just want to stay home and take another extra nap. Or isolation or loneliness, even for someone even for an introvert person that could happen. Homesickness, why am I here? I want to go home. Loss of focus and ability to complete tasks. In this case, I'm talking about simple tasks like getting on a bus, go from A to B, do groceries. Simple, everyday things become an enormous task. Stereotyping, sleep and eating disturbances, whether you sleep too much or too little, or you eat too much or too little. Hopelessness and depression, which is kind of a severe reaction to the sense of isolation and the sense of no matter what I try, everything is still overwhelming. What am I going to do? Loss of identity. Who am I? The part of me, the core part of me that was important to me back home is either invisible or even wrong, quote unquote wrong, in this new culture now. Who am I? Who should I be now? Unresolved issues surfacing. That's a very common one, actually. This is one that comes from my own experience. I've read or tried to look at different academic works on this area, and very few of them mention this, but in my personal experience and the experiences of my close friends, this is a very common one, that unresolved issues such as from our original home, some hurt and wounds that we experienced as a child seems to be enlarged, seems to be surfacing. Issues that I thought I've already dealt with that ages ago become apparent again, which is a shock because, as I said, I thought I've dealt with this. Hyper irritability, inappropriate anger and hostility. Not everyone experiences this. Again, this list is very general and different individuals will have different emphasis and different tendencies. For example, for people who tend to divert the aggression inward, they might feel a lot of shame, self-blame, they might feel like a failure. But for someone whose pattern of dealing with stress is to divert it outward, to project it on the environment, they might be they might have the tendency to be angry, to blame this nation. I hate this place. Why am I here? So everyone might have different tendencies, but roughly this is something very common. Excessive critical reactions to host culture. No matter where you come from, what kind of personal traits you have in terms of dealing with stress or anger, it's a very common one, even if internally you're like thinking about how much you really are fed up with the host culture. It's very common, and eventually dependency on one's compatriots. For me, I'm a Chinese person. When I traveled abroad, a familiar face is such a comfort in the crowd, and I just suddenly want to hug them and be like, you're my constant friend. The comfort of something familiar when we're in this turbulent boat of unfamiliarity or this strange culture is just immense. So what will happen if you leave at this stage? How would you feel about the host culture? How would you feel about being cross-cultural in general? And what would you say to people back home about leaving the country again or to go to this particular place? What advice would you give? So